everybody, and welcome back to my channel. So this video is going to be a bit of a different one, kind of just testing the grounds, and also just because this is something that really interests me, and it might not interest you, but yeah, I find this quite interesting, especially because this was the first year that I have ever tracked the amount of reading that I do in 1 year. I also have a few other bookish kind of videos that I have planned to kind of give to you guys, and if it's something that you guys don't enjoy, I won't upload it again, but it's just something to try. Also, my Those Eyeshadows project pan, which I have now just filmed the intro for, which you guys will be seeing next week on Saturday. Let's just get into this video. I'm sorry about the poor lighting, but I haven't had a chance to film this week. It's been a really heavy online college week, and honestly just a lot has had to be explained to us with the new education and the way that the education is going down at the moment. I was going to take all of these books off of my bookshelf, but I'm not gonna lie, just would have been way too long and way too stressful to try and then put them back on my bookshelf. So basically I use an app called Goodreads, which I found from the BookTube community. My goal last year was to read 50 books. I didn't quite hit that goal. I ended up reading 48 books out of the 50. Let me go through the reading statistics and stuff like that. If this is something that you guys are not interested in, then I completely understand. I read 48 books this year, like I told you guys, and I read 17,535 pages. I have all the statistics on my iPad because that's where I have my Goodreads app. Honestly, that page count doesn't mean much to me right now because, like I said, I have never actually tracked my reading before, so this number doesn't mean much to me right now. But my average rating for last year was 6.3 stars, which I'd say is pretty goddamn good. That means that I was enjoying most of the things that I was reading. It's pretty close to 4 stars average, to be fair, so I'm quite happy with that average. I would love to see it go up a little bit more this year. I definitely want to try and focus more on things that definitely interest me and I definitely love, and not being encouraged as much by what everybody else is reading at the time. Anyway, let's have a look at my 2020 books. So the first book that I read in 2020 is Stephen King, The Outsider, which I will put pictures over here, as I said earlier. I love this book. I gave this 5 stars. It was a 5-star read for me. I absolutely loved it. I definitely found the first little bit hard to get into. There's now a TV show on this book. Then I read Harlan Coben Home. This book was, again, really good. I actually read quite a few books from Harlan Coben because she reminds me a little bit of Tess Gretterson, and I genuinely love that. I read The Prison Doctor by Dr. Amanda Brown, and this is one of the things that I regret not rating higher. So I gave this 4 stars when I read it. I absolutely loved it. This was my first non-fiction of the year, and I believe it was my only non-fiction of the year, and I don't read non-fiction a lot, is what that tells you. And I don't tend to enjoy non-fiction. I always tend to put non-fiction down. However, this was gripping. I take law as an A-level, and I learned so many interesting things from here that I actually got to apply in my law A-level. Next, I read The Binding by Bridget Collins. This was kind of like a controversial one for me. I gave this 4 stars, but I'd say for me it was more of a 3-star read, but I felt pressured by a lot of people who loved this, who gave it really high ratings. So I ended up giving it 4 stars, even if for me the experience was more of a 3-star. I just found it okay. It wasn't anything amazing or out of this world for me personally. I thought it was just a bit slow in places, a little bit repetitive sometimes, but it's kind of the idea of a book within a book. So the situation is you talk about books in the book, and it's very interesting. Then I read Anne Cleeve's The Glass Room, which I gave 3 stars, which I think was a bit kind of me. Again, I think this one I would have put lower now. I would give it probably 2 stars. This just wasn't for me. I felt like it wasn't really focused on like the crime itself, but more focused on talking and the conversations that a detective has, which is, depends on what you want from a detective kind of novel, but that's not really what I wanted. I wanted to be more in the action. Then I started off February reading The Beautiful by Renee Ardier, which I absolutely loved. I've read this book twice this year. I read it in February, and then I read it in July when the next book was coming out, but actually that book was delayed, but I did reread it just to prep me for the second book in the series, which was The Damned, which I didn't actually end up reading straight away. Fun fact. I give this 5 stars overall. On my second read, I thought it would probably move down to 4 stars, but I definitely kept it at 5 stars. I enjoyed this book so much, and I really loved our main character. I think I'm definitely a character driven kind of person. He has such a good sense of humor. I loved the love interest Bastian. I loved that he was kind of like that bad boy kind of genre, like that bad boy kind of style, who did kind of wicked things that a lot of people disagreed with, but at the same time he was perfectly human. I also liked the underlying feel of Paranormal Activity. It wasn't very present, but I liked the underlying feel and the feel of it, and the ending broke me. It broke me that I read that ending and then I had to wait like 4 months for the next book to come out. And I read The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, which I gave 5 stars as well. This was another 5-star read for me, and I finished this on the 5th of Feb. This is a 342 page book. I loved it. It's a thriller. I don't want to really reveal too much, but it's really clever the way that it flips from like past to present, and you don't really understand why that is super important until the very end. And I read The Great Gatsby by S. Scott Fitzgerald, which is rated on here as 2 stars. I would say I read this book about 4 times now, and I'd definitely say my rating's gone up now to like a 3.5. I kind of enjoy this book now, but I don't love it. It's not one of my favourites. It's something that I study for my A-level. I read The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, which is the first in the Folk of Air series. I read the whole Folk of Air series in February, I believe. I definitely recommend it. It's got that romance with that fairy fantasy evil underlie thing, and if you guys are into that like fantasy romance, there's a fairy romance, and it's just fucking brilliant. I love this. I can't describe to you why, but I just generally love it. Prince I gave 4 stars. The Wicked King I gave 5 stars, which was my favourite. I read The Queen of Nothing as well, which is the final book, and I gave that one 4 stars as well, which actually won the Goodreads Choice Award for 2020 as well. I also read a series from my library. I read Gillian Anderson and Jeff Rovin's series, which is the Earth End saga, I believe. So the first book is A Vision of Fire, which had 4 stars, that I gave 4 stars to, and then you have A Dream of Ice, which I gave 4 stars to as well. And then the last book is The Sea of Sound. The Sound of Seas, which I gave 2 stars. I would definitely say the last book in this series let me down a lot. Then I read Psycho by Robert Bloch, which is another 2-star. Oh no, 1 star. This is a 1-star rating. Honestly, this is something that I spent my money on, and I think I paid like £9 or £10 for a book that's under 200 pages long, and on the blurb it says that it's going to really scare you and that it's really scary. In my opinion, I personally found it quite boring and lackluster. It did not scare me at all, and I could see where the ending was going, and the ending doesn't even make sense, which just made me even more mad. I read Truth Witch by Susan Dennard, which is another one that I read from the library. I gave this 5 stars, absolutely loved this. And I had another 5-star read with Tess Gretterson the Surgeon. Love this. Like I said, I love Tess Gretterson books in general. I read the first book in the Lunar Chronicles from Marissa Myers, which is Cinder. I gave this 3 stars. I didn't really enjoy this book, but it kind of definitely felt like an introduction to a bigger series, to be completely honest. The Assassin's Apprentice, which is the first book in the Farseer trilogy from Robin Hobb, and Robin Hobb is an author that was new to me this year, and I absolutely loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. It was an amazing book. It's an epic high fantasy series. There's a huge book series. The books are really, really chunky. Then, obviously, after those 5-star read showdown, I had to read a bad book, and that was Salem's Lot by Stephen King. That's the 751 page long book that I gave 2 stars to. That's right, 752 pages, and I gave fucking 2 stars to it. I finished this one in April, but I believe I started it in March. Here's the thing, like, it's not a bad book. Stephen King is really, really descriptive. The thing is, I was enjoying this until it got to the point of no return, where an author just writes way too much that then makes the book really, really repetitive and boring. There was a point where this was so interesting and kind of spooky, and then the fact that it just kept continuing just really destroyed the rest of it. I read my first romance of the year, or categorized as romance, and that was The Flatshare by Beth O'Leary, and I gave this 3 stars. I didn't think I was a romance reader, but let me tell you guys, I really enjoyed this. And I read Othello, the Shakespeare story. Like I said, it's the children's one. I gave it 2 stars. And I read Peter Robinson's Careless Love. This is another like detective mystery kind of author that I actually really, really enjoyed. I gave this 3 stars. I read Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hiller. I gave this 3 stars. I read Circe by Madeline Miller, which this is a very unpopular opinion from me. 1 star for me. I read Where the World Ends by Geraldine McCargaran? I don't know how to say that surname. I gave this 2 stars. I read the second book in the Lunar Chronicles, which is Scarlet. Again, another April read. This one was 452 pages, and I gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed this one, and I'm interested to finish off the last 2 books of this series. Whole of the 50 Shades series from E.L. James. Like I said, I went to a romance, and I read these off the back of one another. I read one after another after another. I read 50 Shades of Grey, which I gave 4 stars. The second book I gave 5 stars, which was 50 Shades Darker, and then finally 50 Shades Free I gave 4 stars to as well. Then I read In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. This is something that I actually am doing my English coursework on, and I gave this 3 stars. I don't hate it, I don't love it, it's based on a true story. Then I read Rin Witch by Susan Dennard, which is the second book to Truth Witch, which is the Witchlands novel series, and I gave this 4 stars. Again, another one that I really enjoyed. I also read off the back of the second book the third book and the third and final book in that series, which is Blood Witch by Susan Dennard, which I also gave 4 stars. I read another Harlan Coben. This was Stay Close. I gave this one 4 stars as well. I really enjoyed this. And I read a classic. Classics are not one of my things to read that often. Obviously In Cold Blood and The Great Gatsby are classics, but I read them both for my A-level. This one I read off my own back, and this is an Oscar Wilde classic. This is The Importance of Being Earnest. I gave this 4 stars. I just find this so funny. The Woman Inside by E.G. Scott. Did not enjoy this. I just kind of found, I think this book taught me that I'm not really interested in a protagonist who is a drug addict in any way or anything like that. I think I can get through it if it's not like a predominant and main feature in the story. And I read My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This is definitely one you need to mentally prepare yourself for. I gave this 5 stars. I thought this was an absolutely amazing read, and there is a couple of rape scenes in here. There is a lot of warnings and trigger warnings for this book, so make sure you look them up before you actually give this book a go. But this is something that I think is really hard hitting, hard to read, but really well written and handled in a really delicate and understanding way. And I think Kate Elizabeth Russell did a really good job at writing this book, in my opinion. I read Crisscross by James Patterson, which is an Alex Cross, which is one of the ones in his Alex Cross series. Gave this 5 stars. Absolutely love this. I read Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Gave this one 5 stars. I quite enjoyed the first book. I thought it was pretty good. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I gave that 4 stars. Tennessee Williams' A Streetcar Named Desire. I gave this one 2 stars. I think now I understand the play, it'll probably be a 3-star read for me. Again, another one that I'm reading for my A-level. I read The Damned, which was one of the most highly anticipated book releases for me last year. I read The Colour Purple by Alice Walker. Sadly, I did not know what this was going into it. It's a collection of poems / short stories, which I now know, and I gave this 2 stars because I didn't know what it was about. I just want to put it out there, I didn't know what it was about. I didn't do enough research for this book, and I blame myself for that, but I do know this is a really hard-hitting book for people who know what it's about, so definitely do research before you read this book. The Royal Assassin, which is the second book in the Fast Year trilogy by Robin Hobb. I gave 5 stars too. Again, adored this. I love reading from Fitz's point of view. The final book that I read this year was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which is actually my favourite Harry Potter film, I'm pretty sure. It flopped for me. I gave it 2 stars. The thing that I found occurring in the Harry Potter books is every time that someone was mentioned, it'd be like, oh, and Voldemort. Voldemort is Harry's arch nemesis, and Voldemort previously had done this and this. And then when Ron and Hermione were mentioned, it was like, oh, Ron, who Harry went to Hogwarts with in his first and second year, and in their first and second year they got on really well, blah blah blah. And you hear a recap for every character that's reintroduced, and I understand why that's important because it's a children's book, but for me, reading it now doesn't work for me. That's everything for today's video. I hope that this was in some way interesting. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, please do like and subscribe to my channel if you're new around here or would like to see more videos from me, and watch out for next week for my Palettes Eyeshadows introduction that is coming to you guys shortly. And yeah, have a good day. Bye.